Okay, y'all, I left off where Casey was telling her friend Isaac, whatever, Donovan, that she's been friends with the babysitter for over 6 years. Definitely someone she can trust. And it goes on to say he asked how much, and it goes on. He asked how much they charge. She just said it depends. I pay her a lot more than most nannies make. Right. Okay, Casey, keep living in your denial, but there is something I do want to point out here. On 6/13, Casey had told Amy and Ricardo that her dad, George, had a mini stroke. Now, really, seriously, and said she had to go to the hospital. Ricardo said she didn't seem nervous and upset. So, if my father, God rest his soul, had a mini stroke, I would be very upset. I was very upset when I had to go to Tennessee and he had double pneumonia and I thought I was going to lose him then. So, like, seriously, this girl has got issues. On 6/14/08, Amy, Ricardo, and Troy did not have any contact with Casey. On 6/15/08, Amy talked to Casey about her living situation. Casey had told Jesse that her mom, Cindy, was getting a condo. Her parents were getting a divorce. Cindy was signing the home over into Casey's name, and Casey was going to get Amy as a roommate. Amy had even put a change of address in and had mail being sent to the house on Hope Spring Drive. Casey told Amy her dad still had to work on stuff and doesn't know when she was going to be able to move in. Then she told Amy that her mom's not moving out anymore. They are still getting a divorce, George and Cindy, a divorce, and Cindy wants Casey out of the house. Casey told Lee this is the last day she saw Kaylee, counting 31 days from here. Which we know that's not true. It was actually the 16th of June, so she can't even keep her own lies straight. 31 days from 7/15/08. So I want to touch base on that real quick. First of all, Casey can't even keep up with her own lies. And then the part about Casey told Jesse Grunson and George were getting divorced. I really think that there might have been a little tiny bit of truth in there, because I personally think at this point that after this whole case, Casey's trial is done and said and everything's done with that, I believe Cindy and George will get a divorce. I think they're only staying together because they don't want it to look, because they're afraid of how it's going to look. Because, once the trial and everything is done, there's not going to be so much spotlight on George and Cindy themselves at this point. So that could have been somewhat true. But Cindy signing the house over to Casey and Amy was going to move in and get her as a roommate. And then Cindy's not moving out anymore, but they're still getting a divorce. And Cindy wanted Casey out of the house. Honestly, it's just one big mess still, but this is where this case is really crazy in some aspects, because it's just remarkable, and the situations and the issues. On 6/16/08, Jesse thinks he heard Kaylee in the background when he had a 12-minute convo with Casey. Casey and Tony rented 2 movies from Blockbusters. Movies' names were Jumper and Untraceable. Now, we know by this point that Kaylee is nowhere to be seen. There was surveillance video of Casey and Tony Lazaro at the Blockbuster. 6/17, Jesse nor his friends can account where Casey or Kaylee are from this date to 6/23/08. 6/18/08, Troy returns from Washington, D.C. 6/20/08, early afternoon, Brian Berner noticed Casey's car backed into the garage. This was his whole week of her getting the shovel, but not once did he see Kaylee. 6/23/08, when Tony went to Casey's house for the first time, she ran out of gas. He found her walking south on Chickasaw Trail. After they got back to the car, Casey insisted on pouring the gas into the car herself. Okay. So, she runs out of gas on Chickasaw Trail. And we know that this is where Kaylee's body was found, in the wooded area near there. And then she insisted on putting the gas in the car herself. Why? Because it smelled like a dead body, Casey? Do you think we're stupid and we can't connect the dots ourselves as human beings? Really? Really? That would make sense. Because if that body was in that car from, let's say, the time frame of June 16, 2008 to 6/23, I don't know if there's anybody out there who would like to go ahead and comment on this, but that kind of would make sense if there's a dead body in that car in that kind of heat. And that, and then if she moved the body on 6/23, that would still have decomposition, would have a smell to it. So that really does make sense to me in my mind. Like I said, you have to read between the lines of what's happened and what other people are saying and so forth. So that's really interesting. Now that I think about it. Okay, 6/24/08. Jesse called Casey. He does not know where she was. He said he thought he heard Kaylee in the background. He said whenever Casey got on the phone, Kaylee immediately wanted attention. He remembers Casey saying, "Stop doing that. No. Get off the table. Sit down. Casey. No. Stop. No." George approached Brian Berner's son, and said someone had broken into his shed, stole some gas cans. Brian's wife checked their shed, and it was still locked. So, touch base on this one more time, real quick. I really think when Casey was on the phone with Jesse Grund, I really think that was just a ploy to make anybody she could to point out an alibi that she had Kaylee with her. But that makes no sense too, because if she said that, she's still screwing up her own life, because I don't think she thought she was going to get caught. In any situation, but she said the last time she saw Zenaida, or she saw Casey and she dropped her off at Zenaida's Sawgrass apartment, was the 16th or 15th of June. But we know the 15th of June, Kaylee was with Cindy. Anyways, moving on to 6/25/08. Casey told Amy there was this horrible smell in her car, and she could not figure out what it was. At least 2 days later, Casey said she thinks her dad ran something over with her car when he borrowed it, and it smells like something died in the car. She said the engine being the source of the smell. 2 days after she dropped her kid off in the woods. Makes sense to me. 6/27/08. Casey called Jesse. She wanted to invite him to go to Fusion, and Jesse declined. He said she had a little falling out with Cindy. He texted her, "Where's Kaylee?" and said Kaylee is with a nanny at the beach. He has never met Zanny, but heard about her for at least 6 months. Casey tells Amy she ran out of gas. Text to Amy. Casey said part of an animal plaster on the frame of the car, which was end of the mystery. She had gotten rid of it. She never heard about the smell again. And this is Amy saying she never heard about the smell again. Sometime frame, Casey said the nanny had taken Kaylee and other child she watched to the beach for the weekend. When Tony picked Casey up at Amscott, he asked if there was anything he needed to look at. She said not to bother, that her father was going to take care of it. Again, another lie we know. So we're at 6/28/09. Casey called Jesse. She told him that she had ran out of gas and wanted to borrow a gas can, but he could not help her because he was on the other side of town. That was about 1:25 p.m. Through Jesse's own investigation, the car was at Amscott on 6/29. 6:30, Casey called Amy at 9:45 a.m. and asked about gas cans and was with Amy until Amy went to work that night. Car was towed by Johnson's. Tony left for New York at 9:58 a.m. Amy told Jesse that Casey visited her about 9 a.m. in Tony's Jeep. Casey and Amy went to Target. Amy purchased a gas can for Casey. Kaylee was not with Casey. Cindy said said Zanny's roommate Jennifer was watching Kaylee because Zanny couldn't. Jennifer had Kaylee at the park at Universal Park while Casey was working. Cindy was frustrated because Cindy had that whole week off and could have watched Kaylee. 7108. Jesse got a call from Casey at 10:15 a.m. Casey said, "Please, I need a favor." She said, "Well, I need to take a shower before work. I was staying at Tony's, but I don't have the key to get back in his place, and I can't go to my parents' place to take a shower." He said, "Yes." Casey arrived at 10:39 a.m. Called when she got to the door. He said she didn't look like she needed a shower. She had a bag with her. She came out and sat around until 12 p.m. Kaylee was not with her. She stayed the night on the 1st and 2nd at Amy and Ricardo's with no Kaylee. 7308. Jesse got a text from Casey. "There's something going on in my family right now. If my mom tries to call you, don't say anything. Stay out of it. I'll take care of it." At 2:46 p.m. she got a new tattoo. From 5 to 11 p.m. Troy's girlfriend Melissa was left with Casey. Troy had told her that Casey was a single mother. When Troy got back and picked his girlfriend up, Troy said his girlfriend told him that Casey never said a word about Kaylee the entire time. Gee, I wonder why. Because she killed her daughter. Troy said Casey got upset because her brother Lee called and said he was coming to get her and she wanted to leave. Troy, Casey, and Melissa left. 7408. Casey called Jesse Grund at 3:17 p.m. Casey told Amy Kaylee was at SeaWorld with a nanny. 7508. Casey was with Will, friend of Amy's, and Amy went shopping with them. Last time Sean Daly saw Casey at Buffalo Wild Wings, she was with Tony. 7608. Troy gets text from Casey at 12:52. Casey is with Tony. Tony was trying to get in contact with her, or Troy was trying to get in contact with her about the trip to Puerto Rico. 7708. Last time Matthew Chris saw Casey at Subway, he said he asked Casey how Kaylee was, and Casey said she's good. She was at a play date. He said her demeanor wasn't out of the norm. Maybe I mean, this is just, maybe a little needed. Casey texted Chris. He was at Buffalo Wild Wings saying, "Hey, I hope you're enjoying your date." He asked, "What do you mean?" She was there and came up and said hi. She was there with Sean Daly and Tony, I believe. So 7809. Amy leaves for Puerto Rico. Casey takes her to the airport. They took Amy's car. Casey starts to borrow Amy's car. Amy had asked about the gas can, whether or not she got her car back. Casey told Amy, "Oh, well, the car was towed, but my parents got it. It's in the shop." 7908. Ricardo left for Puerto Rico. 71108. Register letter from towing company left on front door of the Anthony's home. Notice of paper. So, since I only got a couple minutes here, this is where the register letter from Tony was left on the front door, and we know at this point that they don't notice it for a couple of days until they're out actually working on on their yard. And that was on 7/13. Register letter was noticed while Cindy and George were doing yard work. And we know this now because they said that they don't normally use the front door. They normally just use the garage because they park their cars, which is normal. Most people do, unless you have a visitor who don't know. They knock on the front door. So we're going to leave it off there, and my next part will be coming soon. I hope you guys have enjoyed these few videos that I've put up. And please leave any questions, comments, anything you want to know. Like I said, you can Facebook me, Kimberly Mulrooney, and it's KIMBERLYMULROONEY. And hopefully we get some good discussions going on, because I would love to start doing Skype phone calls with and put it on YouTube here for great discussions and debates. Whether